Since I'm quitting picks, I figured I might as well make a video and show everybody how to make their own picks, really. Because it's really simple. You don't need to know anything about sports to make picks on Real, to be honest with you. Like me, when MLB, NHL, UFC came to the app, I didn't know anything about any of them. Yet I'm still really high on all the leaderboards. This video is basically a pick group because it'll show you how to do everything, but you can do it yourself. There's a reason Karma Dealer has 10K, because I know a lot of people in Karma Dealer, they only use my group for picks, because my group is the only pick group that you can just have noties on and not have to worry about all the extra BS without having to rely on other pick groups with a bunch of noties for all this other trades and group promoting and all that. So if you're one of those people, this video is basically a pick group for you. It'll tell you how I make all my bets. It's basically a Karma Dealer, but in a video. So I'm gonna go through every sport, how to make pregame and in-game picks, and I'll make sure that I put chapters on the video so that on YouTube you can just navigate really easily through the video. First of all, you're gonna wanna have two apps. You're gonna want FanDuel and DraftKings. Now I know DraftKings, you can view the odds for games without making an account. FanDuel, you might need an account. MLB is definitely the most complicated sport to bet on. For pre-games, we'll just take this game, Tigers and Guardians, for example. You're gonna use FanDuel for most MLB polls. Over on FanDuel, you go and you look at the Tigers game. The over-under is set at 7. Now on Real, the over-under is 8.5. So I'm gonna go under 100 because sportsbooks have a way lower line. Now, if the line was 7.5 on FanDuel, I would still go under 100. If the line was 8 on FanDuel, but the under was favored, I would go under 100. If the line was 8 on FanDuel and the over was favored, I would go over, no bets. If the line was 8.5 on FanDuel, but the under was favored, I would go under, no bet. If the over was favored on 8.5 on FanDuel, I would go over, no bet. If the line was 9 on FanDuel, but the under was favored, I would go over, no bet. If the line was 9 on FanDuel, but the over was favored, I would go over 100. And if the line was anything higher than 9, then I would obviously go over 100. You're basically just looking for the difference in the lines. For another example, Braves versus Reds. The over-under is set at 8 on Real. On FanDuel, the over-under is 7.5, but the under is favored. So I'm going to go under 100. If the over-under is the same on FanDuel and Real, you're going to want to go no bet on what the odds are leaning towards on FanDuel. So say, for example, FanDuel had the line at 8 for this game as well, but the over was minus 130, you would go over, no bet. Same thing if the under was minus 130, you would go under, no bet. But if there's a difference of 0.5 in the lines from Real to FanDuel, you're also going to want to no bet unless, for example, the line was 8.5 for this game on FanDuel, but the over was favored, then you would go over 100. But if the line was 8.5 on FanDuel and the under was favored, you would go over, no bet. Whenever you see there's a difference of a 1 run or more in the lines, you're going to want to put 100 on it. So obviously the line is 8 here. If the line was 7, instant under 100. If the line was 9, instant over 100. Don't even got to think about it. So for an example of FanDuel and Real having the same over-under line, we have the Astros versus Athletics game. Line is 8.5 on Real. The line is 8.5 on FanDuel. However, the under is minus 115. So on Real, I go under, no bets, since it's the same line, but it is leaning towards the under. I highly advise in every scenario when the line is the same to go no bets. Another scenario example is this Orioles versus Marlins game. The line is 8.5 on Real. On FanDuel, the line is 8. However, the over is favored. So I go under, no bet on Real. Now, if under 8 was favored on FanDuel, then I would go under 100. So there's a big difference between the line being 8 on FanDuel and the over being favored, and the line being 8 on FanDuel and the under being favored. Another example is this Padres versus Nationals game. The over-under is set at 9.5 on Real, but on FanDuel, the over-under is 8.5. I'm going to put under 100. Even though the over 8.5 is favored, it doesn't matter. It's still a whole run difference, so you still go under 100. But if the line was 10.5 on FanDuel and 9.5 on Real, then you would go over 100 on Real. Another scenario example we'll do this Diamondbacks versus Royals game. The over-under is 9.5 on Real. On FanDuel, the over-under is 9, but the odds are even, both minus 110 for the over-under. So in this scenario, obviously the line is lower on FanDuel, so you would put under, but the odds aren't leaning either way, so you would go no bet on this. For the Pick the Winner polls, this is where it gets complicated as well. For example, we have the Tigers and Guardians game. On Real, Cleveland is favored minus 142. On FanDuel, Cleveland is minus 144. So obviously there's a small difference there, but not enough to make it sway one way. So if the line is that close on Real and FanDuel, you should go no bet. So if Cleveland was minus 138 on FanDuel, I would still go Cleveland no bet. In a scenario like this Braves and Reds game, the Braves are minus 149 on Real, but on FanDuel they're minus 180. So obviously that is a way bigger gap in the line. So I'm going to put 100 on the Braves since they're even more favored on FanDuel. And not just a little bit, it's a lot. Another scenario is this Rays and Blue Jays game. Now you can see the odds here. Toronto is favored on Real. However, on FanDuel, the Rays are favored. This happens with MLB a lot where the lines for favorites are way off. So obviously the Rays are favored on FanDuel, and they're at plus 136 odds on Real, which is really good value considering they're actually favored on a sportsbook. So I put 100 on the Rays. Astros versus Athletics. Houston is minus 136. Then on FanDuel, they're minus 156. So I'd say if FanDuel favors them by 20 or more than what Real favors them by, put 100 on them. If FanDuel favors them less than 20 more than Real, for example, if Houston was 146 on FanDuel, then I would go Houston no bet. Another scenario is this Orioles and Marlins game. You can see Baltimore is minus 174 on Real. On FanDuel, they're only minus 138. So since they're favored by a lot less on FanDuel, I'm going to go Marlins no bet. Now, if Marlins were favored to win on FanDuel, then I would go Marlins 100. But it's basically the opposite of the Braves game where the Braves are favored by way more, so I put 100 on them. But since the Orioles are favored by way less, then I go with the other team, which would be the Marlins in this case. Again, if they're favored by 20 to 30 at minimum less on FanDuel than on Real, then I would go with the other team no bets. And obviously, if the team that's not favored on Real is favored on FanDuel, pick them to win. Another scenario, Padres versus Nationals game here. You could see Washington is minus 118 on Real. However, on FanDuel, the odds are even, both minus 108. So I'm going to go San Diego no bet. Since they're close odds on Real, but even odds on FanDuel, I'm going to go no bet, since it's not favoring the Padres on FanDuel. Now, the most obvious polls are like this: the Rangers versus White Sox. Texas is favored, minus 126 on Real. On FanDuel, they're minus 270. You see how big that gap is? Instant 100 on the Rangers. Pretty simple. If you see a gap that big, definitely go 100 on them. For the third poll, the stat poll, usually you'll be able to tell, obviously, this game tab next to feed. You can check and see if you hit view full comparison. You can see how many home runs the teams have, how many strikeouts. Normally, for a home run poll, you'll pick who you have to win. The stat poll, you should always put 100 on. So, for example, Cleveland, I had to win. So, for more home runs, I put 100 on Cleveland. Now, for a scenario like this, I have the Rays to win, but I put Blue Jays 100 for pitch and strikeouts. For these, I'll look at pitchers' games, and you can see, obviously, how many Ks they get each game. And look at both, and you can see who gets more usually. In this case, Rodriguez is getting 7 and 6 consistently, while Eflin was only getting 5 to 6 consistently. So, 100 on the Jays. For a runners left on base poll, you'll look into the pitcher's past games to see how many left on base there were. All you gotta do is click on the pitcher's game, then click on the game, and then click on the opposite team. You can see left on base. For example, Mariners had 6. overseers, click on the game, opposite team, 6 left on base. Click on the game again, 6 left on base, right? And then you go to Hunter Brown again. Next game, 6 left on base, 6 left on base again. You know, it's pretty even sometimes, but eventually you'll find a difference, and it's really looking at the pitchers for those. To record more hitting strikeouts poll, pretty straightforward. Once again, just look at the pitchers. Past games, you can see how many Ks they get. Obviously, Glass now is one of the best at getting Ks. Super lopsided, pretty easy pull there. You'll pick the team opposite to that pitcher. For a team to record more walks poll, this is a past game, so obviously the game's over, but you can look at pitchers. So we click on the pitcher, click on that profile picture, go to past games, look. 1 walk, 1 walk, 1 walk, 1 walk. Consistently only walking 1. And then the other pitcher, click on their games, walking 2, 0, 2 walks, 2 walks. So consistently getting more. For example, the Washington Nationals pitcher there recorded more walks than the Padres pitcher consistently, so you'll pick the Padres to record more walks. It's not asking for pitching walks, it's asking for batting walks. When it comes to hit streak polls, you're going to go yes 50 on every one of them as long as the player's playing. Even if, in an example like this, it isn't a star player, as long as they're in the lineup, you're going to want to go yes 50. Now, if they're not in the lineup, technically no 50 is what you should go, but it just voids if they're not playing, so it doesn't really matter. For the run to score in the first inning, a lot of different scenarios. For example, here, you're always going to want to look at what you have for the over-under to do the no-run first inning or run first inning. For example, this game, I have the under 8.5, and the actual line on FanDuel is 7.5, which is really low. So I'm going to go no 50. Basically, if you go under, you're going to go no. But if you're going under 100, you're going to go no 50. If you're going under no bet, you're probably going to go no bets. The only case you'll bet 50 on no if you go under no bet is if the line that you're going under on is 7.5 or lower. Now, for example, here, I picked over. So when I go down to the run first inning, I pick yes. If you pick over, pick yes, but don't bet. Never bet on a yes run first inning unless the line is extremely high, meaning like over 10.5, which really only happens in like out of country games or cores, which is the Rockies field, and since they're in Colorado, they have like insane elevation, so balls fly higher, something like that. Even if you go over 100, you go yes, no bet. As for the RBI poll, you just got to click. You'll see this selecting. Pick someone who is in the batting order, obviously. Pretty straightforward. Shouldn't have to say that, but, you know, just in case. And usually I'll pick someone. I'm not going to pick someone that's super high in the batting order. So I'll usually pick someone that's batting 6th or below. Now, obviously, don't pick someone who is batting less than .200. For example, Taylor Walls, do not pick him. He's not batting over 200. You want to pick someone who bats over 200, has a decent amount of RBIs, maybe a couple home runs. So for example, here I'm picking Danny Jansen, bats over 200, 17 RBIs, 6 homers. But you're going to want to pick someone that's lower and going to be less picked so you get more karma. For an in-game pick the winner poll, you're always going to stick with your pregame. Obviously, if you went no bet on the pick the winner pregame, you're going to go no bet on the pick the winner in-game. If you put 100 on the team to win pregame, you're going to put 100 on them on the in-game pick the winner, unless obviously they're losing by a lot. But if it's tied or they're winning, then put 100 on them. If they're losing, go no bet on them. At the end of the third, you'll get a player, probably a hit poll, or hits, runs, RBIs, whatever. At the end of the third, whatever player it is, you're going to go over no bets. For a run to score in the fourth, You're going to follow your pregame. Pregame, I went under 7 runs, so I'm going to go no for a run in the 4th. For next run scored at the end of the 7th, a lot of the time, no more is the smarter pick, but depends on the scenario, obviously. If they're tied, do not pick no more. At the end of the 7th, you'll get a poll for a player, probably a 0.5 total basis, something like that. If the odds are like this, where the over is plus 200 or more, you're going to want to go over no bets. By the way, all these in-game polls are no bet. Unless you watch an at-bat and they get a hit, then you go, obviously, over max bet. There's no point in going under 50 in this scenario when the over, you can bet 0 and almost win more. Now, especially with these 7th inning polls, if the person just batted at the end of the 7th, or they're within the last 4 people that batted on that team, you're going to go under 50 because they're not going to bat again. Now, if you ever see odds on a pick the winner like this, where they're crazy odds, go with the plus odds, no bet. It's not worth betting max karma on the Pirates in this scenario. You're going to win 5 karma. Hits, runs, RBIs polls, treat them the same as a total bases or hits poll. So same scenario. If the odds are crazy, like plus 200, you're going to go no bet on the plus 200 as long as obviously they didn't just bat and they're not going to bat again. For total runs scored polls, you're going to go over to FanDuel, and as the game is going on, the lines update. So for example, this Tigers game is going on right now. The line updated, it's now 9.5. The pregame was 7. So again, you'll just follow the odds on it. If there was a poll right now for this Tigers-Guardians game and it was over under 9.5 runs scored, the under is minus 128. So you go under 100. I usually bet 100 on these. It's usually worth it. But if it was minus 128 on the over 9.5, I would go over no bet. I would never bet on the over on a total run scored poll. Only bet on the under. And obviously just watch the odds. Just like a pick the winner, if the odds are way more favoring the under than on real, then obviously go under 100. If the odds are way more favoring the over than on real, over 100. But highly recommend don't bet on the over. Just go over no bet. For the next run scored, usually you'll pick who you pick to win. Obviously, unless it's at the end of the 7th, which sometimes you would put no more. But other than that, you're always just going to go no bet on the team you pick to win. Here's an example of the over-under where I picked the over because the over was favored on FanDuel as well. Just went no bet. It was a win, but still don't recommend betting over 100 ever, unless it's insane odds. Again, for a run to score in the 8th, same thing as run to score in the 4th. Look at your pregame. Pregame, in this game, I had the under, so run to score in the 8th, I went no. Never bet on these, by the way. Any home run poll you ever see, whether it's over 0.5 or over 1.5 home runs, always go over no bet. The under is never worth it. With odds at minus 900, you should not be picking the under. There's no reason to. Do not bet on it, though, but always go over no bet on a home run poll, even if it doesn't win, but it's still more worth it. On a game of the day, you'll get a pitcher strikeouts poll at the end of the 1st. This is where you use DraftKings, which is why I recommend having DraftKings. This poll is rarely on FanDuel, but you can see the lines for this on DraftKings all the time. Say it was for the Padres-Nationals game. You'll scroll over on this, scroll over all the way to live pitcher props, and you'll be able to see strikeouts, and you can see the lines on those, obviously. Same as an over-under. Follow what the line is leaning towards. And there's also outs recorded. You can get those polls as well. For a pitcher, outs recorded. You can see the lines there. Obviously, just follow it like an over-under. If it's heavily favored, bet on it. If it's not heavily favored, don't bet on it. Pretty straightforward. Now, if you really want to do more research on it, there's also live batter props. You can see what the odds are for people to get another hit, something like that. Also, at the end of the 3rd, with the hit poll, whatever the poll is, if the batter is 0 of 2 at the end of the 3rd, I'll go under no bets. But if they're only 0 of 1, I'll go over no bet every time. Obviously, if it's a watch at bat, then watch at bat and go according to that. And by the way, all you have to do to watch an at bat is click on the game. Some people think that watch at bat means go to your TV and turn on the game. It doesn't. All you have to do is click on the game. You can see right here, the person is batting, and it updates with every pitch. Just watch it and obviously go according to what happens. The only time I wouldn't stick with your pregame is in this scenario where the pick the winner is crazy odds. There's no point in betting on the Dodgers. Just go with San Francisco. No bets every time. So for WNBA, the only app I use is FanDuel. For pre-games, for example, Fever and Wings game, the over-under. Real has the over-under at 176.5. If you go over to FanDuel, the over-under is at 178.5. And obviously, if you don't know how betting lines work, if the odds are minus something, for example, the under on 178.5 is minus 114. That means it's favored. So basically, the more negative, the more favored. But obviously, the line is way higher, multiple points higher on FanDuel. So I'm going to go over 100, since the line is way higher on actual betting books. If the line was 174.5 on FanDuel, I would go under 100 on Real. If the actual betting line is lower, go under 100. If the actual betting line is higher, go over 100. Now, if it's the same, that's when you'll look at the odds. For example, under is favored on the 178.5. So say Real had it at 178.5 as well. The under is favored on FanDuel, so I would go under 100. Now for WNBA, I max bet everything. For the spread, most WNBA games will be the same or very similar spreads as FanDuel. FanDuel's spread for the Fever Wings game is minus 3.5 for the Fever. Real has it as Fever by 4. Now in FanDuel, obviously, you can see minus 114. The Fever are favored to cover 3.5. So I'm going to go with Indiana 100. They're favored to cover 3.5. 0.5 is not that big of a difference for WNBA at least. For other sports, that could change. Obviously, if it's a bigger gap, like if Real had the line as Fever by 8 and FanDuel had the line at Fever by 3, then I would go with Dallas 100. If the odds are the same, for example, Real and FanDuel both have it as Fever minus 3.5, you're going to look at the odds on FanDuel. The Fever are minus 114 to cover 3.5. So if Real has it at 3.5 as well, you're going to take Fever. For the third poll, it's really just about who you pick for spread and all that. Or you look at the stats. Higher field goal percentage. All you got to do is click game, scroll down. Field goal percentage you can see right here in the middle of the screen, right under points allowed per game. Shows you their season field goal percentage. Fever, better field goal percentage, pretty straightforward. If it was 3-point percentage, you'll look right below it. If it's free throw percentage, you'll look right below that. If it's turnovers, usually you pick the opposite that you pick to cover the spread. But also you could just look right below at turnovers and you can see. For the player stat picks, really, all you got to do, look at the averages. So if you want the quick pick, go with somebody who averages 3 or more. If you want to look into it and get more karma, look at past games of people who are averaging slightly under that number. Whether it's rebounds, points, assists, whatever it is, those are your tips for that. And that goes for player stat picks as well. Same concept. Like I said, I max bet everything for WNBA. It's not worth no betting, especially with no odds. But obviously follow those strategies that I just said and max bet them all. As for in-game polls, at the end of every quarter, you'll get the team to score most points next quarter poll. And at halftime, there's the halftime spread poll. For all of those, I always stick with my pregame. For example, here, I picked the Aces to cover spread pregame. Obviously, they didn't cover, which doesn't really matter in the situation. But pick the Aces, right? So more points in quarter 2, pick the Aces again. Halftime spread, pick the Aces. Now for pick the winner at the end of the third quarter. Sometimes it'll be no odds pick the winner, which you'll max bet obviously on your pregame. Sometimes it'll be to score more points in the fourth quarter, which you'll stick with your pregame. Or you'll get a poll like this where the odds are really whack. So if you, for example, if you bet 100 on the Aces here, you wouldn't get that much karma. But if you go no bet on Washington, you would get more karma no betting on Washington than you would max betting on Aces. which is why I always do those for value picks. If you're in the group, you know what I'm talking about. So I do advise those, especially when it's a close game. If it's a blowout and they're up by 30, just take your karma with the betting 100. But if it's a somewhat close game, take the value pick. Don't bet 100 on it, but go no bet like you see on my screen. Obviously, I lost this one because it's a for value pick. You're not going to win them all. It's just for value. As for all the player polls, those are really just looking at past games, seeing what they have. A lot of WNBA games, those polls, the player polls, you're going to want to pick under on, especially in the fourth quarter. But my advice is always look at past games. If they haven't gotten that for a while, go under. If they get it almost every game, go over. You get the point. NBA is pretty much the same as WNBA. The NBA is summer league right now, so real doesn't have any over-unders. But it's the same as WNBA. For example, the Warriors and Cavs game, the over-under is 167.5 on FanDuel. If real had it at 174.5, I would go over 100. If real had it at 178.5, I'd go under 100. Over-under is the same as WNBA reasoning. Same rules apply. Summer League is just pick the winner. Go on FanDuel, and you'll see the middle box out of the three. Out of the three rows, the middle is the pick the winner. Cavaliers are favored, minus 122. So I would put 100 on Cleveland. Now, NBA games, spread, same thing as WNBA. If the spread is 8 on real and only 4 on FanDuel, I'm going to take the team that's not favored in the spread. Vice versa, if the spread on real is 4 and the spread on FanDuel is 8, I'm going to take the favored team. As for the third poll, again, same as WNBA. There's no comparisons, obviously, because it's summer league. There's no comparisons. But just like WNBA, all you got to do, go to the game tab next to the feed. You can see field goal, 3-point percentage, free throw percentage, turnovers, all that. This page right here is basically going to give you all you need to fill that out. Again, same thing for the player pick. Look at past games, who's gotten it, or go by averages. Obviously, summer league, disregard that. Everything's thrown off. But if this were regular season, just normal, look at the averages. Again, quick pick, go with somebody who averages more than that stat. If you want more karma for a riskier pick, go for someone who averages just below that. So for the NBA in-game polls, especially during playoffs, there's a lot of polls during the in-games. Like WNBA, there's going to be the team to score more points in the next quarter. Same as WNBA, stick with your pregame pick. For example, in the last finals game, I picked Boston to win. So after every quarter, I put Boston to score more points the next quarter. And same with the halftime spread. Obviously, I didn't win that one, but it is what it is. Always stick with your pregame unless something drastic happens, like half the team gets injured or something like that, or the best player gets injured, whatever. But usually 99% of the time, stick with your pregame. As for all these other special polls, normally those aren't there. That's just for playoffs, but there is a place to find those. Go to FanDuel, and I don't know if they have it for summer league games, but they don't. But basically all you're gonna have to do to see like over under assists and points and all that for in-game polls, you'll click on the game, and then up by feature, there will be another tab. It'll say player points, player rebounds, all those, and it'll show you all the lines for the players, assists, rebounds, all that. And obviously, look at what's favored. For example, you can see this Jaylen Brown, 22.5 points. If FanDuel had the line at 20 points, I would go under 100. If FanDuel had the line at 24 points, I would go over 100. Basically, it's just a game of differences. Just like WNBA, I recommend max betting everything. Really, the only sport you shouldn't be max betting on is MLB. Also, over-unders in-game. At the halftime, you'll get the halftime over-under, Once again, stick with your pregame. For example, if you picked over on 178.5 pregame and the halftime spread is 180.5, stick with your pregame, go over 100 again. Unless it's a 20-30 point difference in the over-under, it's not worth changing your pregame pick. That goes for WNBA too. I don't think I said that with WNBA, but that goes for the same thing. Same rules apply. Pretty much same thing for NBA and WNBA. The last in-game poll for NBA is going to be whoever gets more points in the game. You'll be able to see the point lines for both players on FanDuel. All you gotta do is click the game and then click player points. It'll show you what their betting line is. So obviously if Kyrie has a betting line of 22 and Derek White has a betting line of 18, you're gonna pick Kyrie to get more. And if they have the same line, both are projected to get 20.5, the line is 20.5 for both of them, then you'd pick whoever is favored to go over 20.5 more. If Kyrie is minus 150 on the over and Derek White is minus 120 on the over, then you'd pick Kyrie. Next up is UFC. Now, I don't know anything about UFC, but I'm 6th on the all-time leaderboard. That's what I mean when I say you do not have to know the sport to be good at betting on real. For example, this first fight right here went 4 for 4 just by following odds on FanDuel. For UFC, you're going to want FanDuel. Normally, going with the favored pick the winner, obviously put 100 on the minus 230 odds, is usually the good pick. And normally the second poll is going to be just betting 100 on what you bet on the first poll for the pick the winner. Usually you'll have the same person there. UFCs are loaded in like every Friday or whatever, so there's not upcoming UFC events on here on Reel yet. But for example, we'll take this fight, which is not loaded in yet. Nice. So basically all you're going to have to do on FanDuel, obviously go click UFC, click your fights, and closer to the fight nights, you'll obviously see the money line right here. Now say on Reel, Durden is minus 110, but obviously on FanDuel, he's minus 128. You're going to put 100 on it. As far as UFC goes, max betting, the pick the winner, the second poll are pretty much must-dos. You should be max betting the first two. The outcome of the fight in the round, those could potentially be no-bet scenarios, but only in certain scenarios. Most of the time, it'll be a clear answer. Under the money line on the day of the fight, there will be outcomes. So it'll be set up like the odds for Durden by knockout, Durden by submission, and Durden by decision. And then same thing with Silva, you'll have the odds for him winning by decision, submission, and knockout. Just take the best odds, honestly. So obviously if Durden by decision is plus 110, and the next closest is Durden by knockout at plus 250, you're going to take Durden for the winner, put 100 on it. Durden for the stat poll, put 100 on it. And decision 100, third round 100. Let's say the odds are leaning towards a knockout or a submission. Obviously, most likely, probably won't be picking third round for those. So again, looking at the odds, there will be underneath the outcome, there will be odds for what round the fight will end in. So say Durden is plus 150 to win by knockout, and the next closest is Durden by decision plus 250. Obviously, you're going to go with Durden knockout 100, and then you'll look at the rounds and say first round is minus 135 and second round is plus 200. Obviously, you're going to pick first round, which would be betting 100 on everything. Now, if it's closer odds and it's a tough choice between first and second round, or it's a tough choice between knockout or decision for the outcome, you might want to go no bet on those because there can be really close odds sometimes. But I recommend usually, unless the odds are within 20 of each other, I would max bet it. This poll right here, you can see all 4 of these polls are insanely tilted to the right. If all 4 polls are like 95% and above, you really don't have to look at odds. Most likely, these are all going to be the correct answers. With UFC only, I say that's okay. If you see polls that are this lopsided in voting, don't even bother looking at the odds. Now, if you see this a day before the fight, then you might need to look because not as many people have voted on it. But when there's 3K people on each poll voting for one side of the poll and only 100 voting on the other side, it's pretty clear what's going to happen. But again, be cautious. You might just want to check just in case. But if it's insanely lopsided like this fight was, it'll most likely be correct. If it is not insanely lopsided, check the odds because the winner and stat poll might be lopsided, but the outcome in the round might not be lopsided, so you're going to want to check odds for those. If the odds are leaning towards decision, don't even bother checking the round odds, just go third. If you're going to pick decision, pick third round or fifth round, however long the fight goes. So for college football, obviously it's not loaded onto Reel yet for the next season, but polls, you're going to want to use FanDuel to check odds. They already have them loaded in for the first games, so I'm just going to go off of what they have. First game, Florida State and Georgia Tech. On Reel, you have to pick, it's not a pick the winner, it's a pick the spread. The spread, obviously Florida State is favored by 12.5, and they're favored to cover 12.5 at minus 112 odds. So I would pick Florida State to cover the spread. If Florida State, and I would max bet that, by the way. College football, you're going to want to max bet everything. I don't think there's any scenario really in college football that you won't be max betting, which means bet 100 on everything, or bet 50 on everything. Whatever you can bet on the poll, max bet it. Now, say Georgia Tech was favored to cover the 12.5. So say instead of minus 108, they were minus 140 to cover it. Then I would pick Georgia Tech to cover the 12.5 spread. So I'd put 100 on Georgia Tech on Reel. As for the over-under, same as all the other sports, really. For example, the over-under on the Florida State-Georgia Tech game is 54.5 on FanDuel. If on Reel, the over-under is 56.5, you're going to go under 100. If the over-under is 52.5, you'll go over 100. Now, if the over-under on Reel is the same as the over-under on FanDuel, but FanDuel has the over at minus 150 and the under at plus 120, you're going to go with the over because the over is favored. So you put 100 on over. Again, max bet everything on college football. As for in-game polls, at the end of each quarter, you're going to want to stick with your pregame. Same as every other sport. I always tell people to stick with their pregame bet. For stat picks, look at past games. If they hit that stat consistently, pick them. Pretty much same as the other sports. Averages are a good thing to look at as well. There could be obviously odds somewhere. I believe there will be odds on FanDuel for like touchdown score and maybe some total yards or receptions. So that's a good option to look at too. Now, for the player to score a touchdown after whatever the point in the game it is, I do have a strategy for that actually. Go over to the team. Either team works really. It can be either team. And for example, you'll pick a running back. Running back is always a good pick because they obviously have a higher chance to score a touchdown. Or pick a receiver with a couple of receptions because you know they're getting the ball. That's always what I go with. NFL, pretty much the same as college football. Over under. For example, Chiefs and Ravens. The over-under is set at 46.5. If the over-under is 48.5 on Reel, you're going to go under 100. If the over-under is 44.5 on Reel, you're going to go over 100. If the over-under is 46.5 on Reel, but you see the odds as they are right now, over is minus 115, then you're going to go over 100 because the over is favored. As far as spread goes, same thing as college football. As you see, the Chiefs are minus 3. They're favored to win. However, the Ravens are minus 115 to cover that spread. So I would put 100 on the Ravens. Now, if they were even odds, both at minus 110, I would go with the favored team, which would be the Chiefs. And as usual, if the spread is minus 5 on Real, but it's minus 3 on FanDuel like it is here, I would go with the Ravens to cover. If the spread is minus 3 on Real, but minus 7 on FanDuel, then I would go with the Chiefs and put 100 on the Chiefs, since they're favored by even more on an actual sportsbook. And again, as for pregame polls with receptions, touchdowns, all that, look at averages, look at past games. Now with these, like for example, the Jared Goff 1.5 passing touchdowns, those odds should be on FanDuel. So you should be able to see those for those polls. Just all you have to do is click on the game and click. There should be like a QB section or passing touchdowns or something like that. As usual, stick with your pregame. For example, the live halftime spread was Lions by 6.5. I picked Lions pregame, so stuck with it. Same with to score more points in the next quarter. And again, just like college football, player to score a touchdown after a certain point in the game. You're going to want to pick somebody who has a couple receptions or a running back that doesn't have a touchdown yet. And if it's in the fourth quarter, no one is a good pick. A lot of the time, college and pro is going to be the same betting style. College football, NFL, pretty much the same all around. Next is college basketball. And like I said for NFL and college football, pro and college is pretty much going to be the same betting style. For pre-games, there's no betting lines on FanDuel or anything yet for college basketball season. Still a while away while I'm recording this. So back on the national championship game, Purdue versus UConn. The over-under for college basketball, same as every other over-under. On Real, the line was 146.5. Now, if FanDuel had it at 148.5, I would have went over max bet, which would have been 300 in this situation because it's championship. If the line was 146.5, but the over was minus 130, I would have went with over max bet again. Now, most likely in this scenario, since I went under 300, the line on FanDuel is probably like 145.5. So obviously the sportsbook is less than on Real, so I went under max bets. Now in playoffs, it's just pick the winner. So you pick the favored team on the sportsbook if it's a pick the winner. If it's spread, same as all the other spreads really. If UConn was minus 3, favored by 3, and they were minus 120 to cover it, I would have max bet on UConn. If the spread was UConn by 3, but Purdue was minus 140 to cover that, I would have went with Purdue. For the stat poll, again, you can go over to the game tab and you'll be able to compare the team's seasons so you can see who has more turnovers, the better three-point percentage, all that good stuff. You can see on that tab. Most of the time, you'll be able to tell from that tab who you should pick. Stat picks, same as every other sport. Quick pick would be someone who averages that stat. If you want to look into it and possibly get more karma for a riskier pick, go for someone who averages less than that, but look at their past games to see if they get that consistently. And again, for in-game polls, for example, Cam Spencer for 20.5 points, those lines should be on FanDuel, in which case you would just follow the favored. So obviously, like Zach Edey, 31.5 points. If the over was minus 140 for that, I would put 100 on the over. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, like normal, stick with your pregame pick for the over-under. If the over-under is 2 points higher at halftime, still stick with what you had pregame. For the spread or pick the winner halftime, stick with who you had pregame. For the polls where you pick a player to score a 3 or to get a free throw or field goal after a certain point, you can look at who has already hit 3s, who's shooting well, or just pick a starter for a free throw field goal poll usually. Should be a safe bet. But yeah, college basketball, pretty much same as NBA. Like most sports, college and pro will be the same. Basically, if it's the same sport, for example, NFL and college football, same sport, college basketball, NBA, same sport, WNBA, NBA, same sport. If it's the same sport, it's going to be the same betting rules pretty much. NHL, slightly different from other sports. For example, we'll click on this Maple Leafs game from I don't even know when, but pregame, over-under, just like all other sports, if the over-under is higher on FanDuel, then over 100 is what you're going to go with. If the over-under is lower on FanDuel, you're going to go under 100. Now on FanDuel, for example, games for next season, Devils versus Sabres, the over-under is at 6.5. So if Real had the over-under at 5.5, I would go over 100. If Real had the over-under at 6, I would go over 100. If Real had the line at 7.5 or 7, then I would go under 100. And on Real, for NHL, it's just to pick the winner. So you'd look at the money line. So for example, the Devils are minus 166. So here's where it gets kind of tricky though. You got to pay attention to the numbers. On Real, there is also odds for NHL games. So just because the Devils are minus 166 on FanDuel doesn't mean they're going to be the same odds here. For example, this game, I put 100 on Toronto. Toronto is minus 175 on Real here. If on FanDuel, they're minus 220 to win this game, I'm going to put 100 on Toronto because they're even more favored on FanDuel. If it's the same, minus 175 on Real, minus 175 on FanDuel, I would still put 100 on there, but possibly, depending on the matchup, possibly a no bet. There are times in NHL where you go no bet. I usually max bet, but again, depends on the matchup. If it's a really close matchup and the odds for the pick the winner are like both minus 110, then I might do a no bet on the pick the winner. But over under, stat poll, max bet it. More goals next period, max bet those. Now if Toronto is minus 200 on Real, but only minus 120 on FanDuel, then I would go with the Canadians. Since the odds are better for a higher gain on Real, and they have a better chance, is what the odds say. Now, if Montreal was favored to win this game on FanDuel, but Toronto is favored on Real, I'm going to go with the Canadians since they're favored on the actual sportsbook. The stat poll, again, you'll be able to look at the game tab next to the feed. It'll show you everything you need for those. For the goal pick for the pregame, pick somebody who's got a good amount of goals. As far as in-game polls go, after every period, there will be a to score more goals next period. Stick with your pregame every time. I pick Toronto pregame. I'm going to pick Toronto after every period. Player to get a goal after the first period and second period, all that. Pick a different player each time. I always pick a different player. You've got a higher chance if you pick a different player each time. One of them should hit. There is actually a strategy to this, though. I do have a strategy. Go to the team you pick to win and look over on the right here at shots on goal. You want to pick someone who's got some shots on goal. It could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 5 shots on goal. It doesn't really matter. Don't pick someone with 0. Pick someone with at least 1 shot on goal. Only thing you got to watch out for is going to be the spread, the money line. Only thing you got to watch out for is the money line. If it's drastically different on FanDuel than on Real, then you're going to want to know how to read that. Obviously, if the team is more favored on FanDuel, put 100 on them on Real. If they're drastically less favored on FanDuel, possibly put 100 on the other team, or maybe a no bet on the other team, depending on how big that difference is. Just like usual, if you guys have any questions, DM me, reply to a comment, ask me. I respond to anybody who asks a genuine question, and anyone that has ever DM'd me knows that. I read every DM, I read every reply, all of it. Very rarely, some things get lost in replies, or if I get a ton of noties in a day, but almost all the time I'm reading everything, especially DMs. I'll always read your DMs. So if you ever have a question, whether it's about karma, racks, whatever, just DM me. I got you. Hopefully you guys enjoy the new group. Well, it's not a new group, but the rebrand. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully the guide helps you, because I know a lot of people, since I'm not doing picks anymore, they're not joining another pick group, because every other pick group that I've ever known, all are not worth joining, because people just want the picks, which is what Karma Dealer gave. There's no extra yap other than occasional small talk. But every other group has like 100 people with perms. They're all spamming trades and join this group, upvote this comment. That's why those groups will never replace Karma Dealer. Yeah, some people might join it, and then they're going to realize, I don't want all these noties for random yap. So that's why I made this guide, so that people don't have to deal with that. Hopefully this helps you guys. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy the new group rebrand. And by the way, before anybody says something stupid like, you only made this a video to get more views and stuff, that's not why. It's because, number one, I figured, and just like the retirement video, I figured this is a lot better than me just typing a message. And also, there's a lot of people who are visual learners, so I figured I'd make a video instead. It's easier to show people, and it's something I'm really good at doing. So enjoy the group. DM me for any questions. DM me or reply to me if there's anything that you want to see in the group with the rebrand. God bless. Peace out.